So in my last video, I talked about the origins of Halloween, All Hallows Eve and All Saints Day, and originally a Christian festival originating officially, formally in the 7th century, but dating back much older to like the 2nd and 3rd century as a similar practice of honouring the dead and the martyrs, and having no connection to Celtic, Irish legends or paganism. But what about all the other stuff in Halloween? Because there's more to it than just October the 31st. People, there's all the dressing up, trick-or-treating. Well, I suppose that's it. Egging houses, depending on where you are. Maybe that's just a British tradition. Now, some of these do have an Irish connection, but before the pagans get super excited, it's not necessarily a paganism connection. People used to carve turnips with faces into lanterns, and there's an old Irish folklore about someone called Jack in connection with these, which is why it's called a jack-o'-lantern. And over time, pumpkins became used in the 20th century, and the carving of faces just carried over, and sometimes they're still called jack-o'-lanterns, even though originally the folklore legend is about a man named Jack and turnip pumpkins. The idea of going house to house, asking for something, not necessarily trick-or-treating, but similar-ish. In the Middle Ages, there was a thing called souling, where people, poor people especially, or poor children, poor families, would go around knocking door to door, asking for soul cakes, which were essentially like donuts, from what I can understand. And in exchange, they'd offer prayers for their departed, who were assumed to be in purgatory. So this is actually a very Middle-aged Catholic tradition. They would often sing songs and offer prayers as well. And so this was actually done all year round, but was obviously a more popular thing during the holidays when everyone was about, things were busier, and there was more people to get food from. But the combination of all these things down through the ages to actually America, when immigrants took a lot of these separate legends and practices across the Atlantic, in the early 20th century, it's all sort of mingled together, and dressing up, the connection to sort of paganism, or spiritual things, ghoulish things, the carving of pumpkins, trick-or-treating, is all a recent modern thing from around the late 19th, 20th century. And America basically commercialized it, as they like to do with everything. And thus was born the modern version of Halloween. And with it being commercialized so much in America and it coming over to Britain, it's firmly ingrained itself in our societies, although probably more America than here, but it's still fairly widespread. Everyone knows what it's about, well, what the modern version is about, and that is it really. There's very little to connect Halloween to anything from Samhain, anything Celtic, anything pagan in general really. It is mostly a secularized, commercialized mingling of lots of ancient things lumped together and sold to make lots of money for stupid decorations and chocolate every year, but with lots of things pushing the myth of it being an ancient Celtic Samhain festival. There is lots of modern neo-pagans jump on this and be like, aha, the church stole yet another thing from pagans, which is just completely untrue. And actually, if anything, pagans stole it from the church. So with the modern version being very ghoulish and focused on darkness and evil, generally speaking, I would say it's best to stay away from that. As Christians, we are to present ourselves as light, not the appearance of evil. But as a general festival, if we're going to celebrate the departed faithful, All Saints Day, or even if you're a Protestant, October 31st is Reformation Day, which is the anniversary of Martin Luther banging his 95 Theses onto the church door, kicking off the Reformation. So you could always celebrate that, unless, of course, you're a Roman Catholic. So to quickly recap, All Hallows Eve, Christian festival. All Saints Day, Christian festival. Trick-or-treating, dressing up, carving pumpkins, a mixed history of medieval soul caking, old ancient Irish folklores, and American commercialization in the 20th century. Very little to do with paganism, if at all. So there you go. Halloween was always a Christian festival, and even if pagan festivals happened around the end of spring and harvest time, they have literally no connection to the Christian festival of All Hallows Eve.